Right, everybody. Welcome to this afternoon's strategic planning. A light agenda today, so I will crack on. If I can just remind you to put phones on silent, vibrate or switch them off. Right, committee. I'll go from left. Councillor Lawson. Rest of us are as is. Minutes of the previous meeting, can we pass them as a true record?
Thank you, Chair. Just to comment, I'm not actually down as being present at the meeting, but I was present, and I think I am recorded in the votes. So, yeah, just making sure.
Okay. Item 3, any interest on lobbying? Councillor Kane, Councillor Pattison, no. Councillor Lawson, Councillor Walker? And none from me. Right, this is a meeting done in public, so we are being webcast. Any public questions? Any deputations or petitions? No. Right, we carried out site visits this morning at Flush Mills, Westgate, Ekmondwyke, Moorside, Cleckheaton and Leeds Road, Huddersfield. Now we'll go on to our first application, which is item 10. Paul. Yeah.
I don't think it affects my decisions on any of the sites, but I have prior arrangements.
Yeah, no problem, Paul. Item 10. This is Flush Mills, Westgate, Ekmondwyke. David.
Thank you, Chair. This application is brought to committee given the size of the site exceeding 0.5 hectares. The site is located close to Ekmondwyke Town Centre, within an existing industrial complex that's mainly got general industrial and storage and distribution uses on the site. This part of Ekmondwyke has mixed commercial and residential character. The site is unallocated in the UDP, therefore policy D2 is relevant. It is a priority employment land in the emerging local plan, and therefore policy PLP 8 is relevant. In terms of national planning guidance, the MPPF at paragraph 80 advises significant weight should be given to support economic growth and productivity. So you can see before you the site. This is the red line boundary. The blue line represents ownership. The existing units of 23 to 28A were formerly part of the large textile mill that existed from the 1930s. Here are the different units. There are approximately 10 individual units. The previous occupant was a producer of greetings cards, and this business has moved into another unit opposite the site. The building was too large for them as occupants. Wakefield Acoustic, which occupy this building, will occupy one of the two units that is proposed. Here are the two units that are shown. One of the key differences is that the ridges of the roof will go from north to south, as opposed to the existing situation where the roofs go east to west. The proposal involves the demolition of these smaller units and the erection of the two larger units. The materials of construction are brick walling to 2 metres in height and metal profile cladding. This is characteristic of the other units in Flush Mills and the area generally. The closest residential properties are those on Barber Square, if you watch the cursor there, properties 8 and 9, and also, which are a pair of semi-detached properties, and also the row of terraced properties to the east. Here are 1 or 2 photos. That's the proposed existing access into the site. That is from Westgate. There's another slide of the proposed building. In terms of elevations, it's the eastern elevation that the existing properties to the east will look out upon. I don't know if members can make that out, but there's a dotted line showing the existing buildings. The proposal involves a reduction of this eastern elevation down to 4.6 metres in height, and the proposed building will then sit approximately 2 metres beyond that. The eaves height is 8.5 metres from the floor slab, which is internally in the building, and 10 metres to the ridge. There is a difference in land levels, as you can see on that section. The proposal also involves the extension of the buildings closer to property number 9. So it's this corner here. Obviously on the site visit, members saw the potential impact on this rear garden area of that property. There has been an objection from this occupant, and the key points are: the building proposed extends 5 metres closer, restricting light to the garden and house, particularly the kitchen. There is already restricted light due to 4.5 metres in height boundary wall along that boundary. Concern for stability of wall once demolition of wall starts. There has been a request for assurances regarding no adverse noise conditions, as the building will be nearer to his property. The objector would support stepping the building back or tapering. In terms of drainage, the site is in flood zone 1, which is most preferable. It's less than 1 hectare in size, and therefore a flood risk assessment is not required. As this is a brownfield site with existing buildings on it, it's likely the runoff will not significantly change. In terms of investment, the applicant has put forward a case that is summarised as estimated number of jobs being created is 10 over the next 12 months. These will be highly skilled in acoustic and engineering sector with 10 to 20 jobs over the next 5 years. The application is recommended for approval subject to conditions, including 2 additional highway conditions. One that involves the blocking up of the existing access that we saw this morning on the site visit. I'll just turn to the plan, which is this access there off Westgate. The other condition would be to include cycle and motorcycle parking. Thank you, Chair.
We have no more speakers on this item, so it's open up to you members. Bob.
It's just really a question and a comment, Chair. Is space about buildings being achieved there, David? Do you know with it being closer to the property?
Yeah, just to confirm, the boundary won't change. The existing wall is to be retained, where those 2 existing properties are, number 8 and number 9. So the boundary won't reduce in terms of the size. The difference being that the building will project closer to those buildings. So In terms of overbearing nature, that's what the applicant's saying. I'm not aware that it conflicts with this guidance because of the existing structure that's there.
Can I just finish off, Chair? It's in the priority employment zone. I think we should be supporting this. I think it's, to be quite honest with you, it's a good application. The other thing really is, for years we used to get samples of cladding, what they're going to use, and we've never had, I don't think I've seen any for ages and ages. And this and the next application, it's saying claddings and facings to be approved by officers. I think members should have a look at these at the same time as well. But I'm quite happy if we can think about that in the future, David, if we get some samples. It's certainly to make it in keeping with the other properties, with the other warehouses and whatever that's around it. I'm pretty sure they'll have selected the materials now at this moment in time. The other thing is I'm quite willing to move this, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, I will second that. And my reasons for that is that I think it's very important that we support the growth of small and medium-sized businesses by giving them the opportunity to develop better quality premises. And I think with this development, it's obviously in an area where job creation is an important factor. They're arguing that they're going to create 10 jobs within the next year and then possibly another 10 or 20 over a 10-year period. And I think that will be very useful. These are skilled jobs as well, where we would expect decent pay levels. And those are the kind of things I think we need to attract into Kirklees.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of issues, really. One is the retention of the bordering wall, especially as it goes up to the north of the site. I think I gave concerns on the bus about should that wall, it's in fairly poor condition, should it collapse. We'd want at least officers to have a look at the materials that the replacement wall will be made of. We don't want breeze block slapping up there and in a very basic manner, so we'd want something sort of resolved there for that to come back, and if that could be conditioned, if we can have some advice on that, that would be good. I'd also want to know, in 10.10 on page 19, when we talk about increased noise levels, we're proposing a condition on there. I just want to know where that sits. Is it in number 2 with the approved plans?
Through you then, Chair. Firstly, in terms of the boundary wall, we think we could deal with that by an additional condition as suggested, where we require details to be submitted, and this would include the treatment of that wall, the method of demolition, and the structural integrity that would need to be submitted to the council. And that would include samples as well. In terms of the noise issue, environmental protection of the council are satisfied with the details that have been submitted. They would be requiring a noise impact assessment as part of the condition.
And that belongs in section 2, though, which is the improved plans. Is that? I'm just trying to figure out where it sits. That's all, just to make sure it's in there.
Yeah, I mean, the condition would require a noise impact assessment to be submitted by the applicant.
Okay, I think we got there.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah? No. Yeah, it will be there. Thank you. Thanks. So I'm happy to support with those conditions.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm happy to support this one. It's going to bring jobs, probably quite a few jobs actually. Going back to the noise situation, there is a place, if you notice, just round the corner, Wakefield Noise. It's a company that does nothing else but check up on noise. So if there is any problem on noise, they're just round the corner. I don't see a problem with that at all. Thank you.
Right. It's no Another a good story for my ward, is that, funnily enough. So this has been moved by Councillor Kane, seconded by Councillor Walker. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's 7-0. Next, we move on to page 23. You're Glenn as well, David? Yeah. Right.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This site at Collier's Way at Clayton West. The site is on the north-eastern edge of Clayton West in a commercial complex, pardon me. The access is off Collier's Way, which is connected to Wakefield Road. The size of the site is 7,000 square metres. The land is identified as derelict land and industrial within the UDP under Policy B2. The site is a priority employment zone within the local plan. Therefore, Policy PLP 8 is relevant. The applicants are R&D Sheet Limited, and they operate over 2 sites in Clayton West, the other also being within close proximity to the village. They make specialist doors and prefabrications of all types of metalwork. They manufacture pharmaceuticals and medical equipment. There is an error in the report that refers to it as being use B1C, light industrial, but I think it's more of a general industrial nature. That is compliant with the development plan policies. The proposal is to erect, there's a couple of slides here, that's the access road coming up to the site. That's at the top of the industrial estate. The applicants are currently within this building at the top. This is the site you can see before you on this slide. And that's the existing access into the site. So the proposal involves the erection of 4 industrial units with an extension to the existing building, which will operate as a loading bay. The use class will be general industrial B2. There will be 2,000 square metres of internal floor space. The applicants have confirmed that this is an investment of £2 million to consolidate their operations. The applicants have stated that this will consolidate their operations. It will allow retention of the workforce and increase staff and workload in the future. There have been no representations from the public and no objections from consultees. Whilst it is a large development, it is well screened, as you can see from some of those photographs. There's a large woodland at the back of the site that goes up the hill. You can get some views of the back of the site there. And with other buildings on the industrial estate, it won't be highly visible on the landscape. Units are to be constructed of brickwork and profile metal cladding, which are characteristic of industrial buildings in the locality and on the industrial estate. The nearest residential properties are down on Wakefield Road. Environmental Protection Department have advised that there should be a condition requiring a noise impact assessment, and conditions would restrict operations between 8 AM and 6:30 during the week and 8 AM till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. This site is also in flood zone 1, which is most preferable. The plan application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions, plus one additional condition from Highways to ensure cycle and motorcycle parking. Thank you, Chair.
No speakers on this item either, so it's over to you. Move it by Councillor Kane, second by Councillor Fair. Those in favour? 7-0 again. Next we go to page 35. This is the application at Moorside, Kirklees, Springfield Farm.
Afternoon, members. I'm one of the senior planners, Matthew Woodward, presenting this application for a single-storey dwelling on land off Moorside. We did conduct a site visit today, so you have had a chance to look at the site and the surroundings. The application site currently contains a single-storey storage building, and that is proposed to be demolished. The site's located off a surface single-width private drive, which is accessed from Moorside. As you saw from the site visit, there are a number of existing properties off this driveway, which would utilise the same access as existing. To the east, outside the application site, are a number of agricultural buildings, which you couldn't see because they are quite well screened from the site. Land to the south, east and west is characterised by open fields allocated as urban green space within the UDP. Moorside itself is mainly residential in nature, but there are some commercial uses in the vicinity of the site, and adjacent to the site there is a nursery. So full planning permission sought for the erection of one detached dwelling, as you can see from this plan. It would be located on the southeastern boundary of the site, and the proposed dwelling would take the form of a dormer bungalow constructed of natural stone with artificial stone roof tiles. Areas of landscaping would be provided, you can't see it from this plan, but along the boundaries. And this is just showing some of the floor plans. In terms of the specific details, there are 4 bedrooms in this unit, and there is a double garage as well, which would be, the double garage would be the part of the building closest to the shared drive. So the current application is a modified proposal to one which was approved in 2017 by this committee. Therefore, the principle of development has already been established. However, just as a reminder, the main considerations in terms of the principle of development are the fact that this site is part of a larger parcel of urban green space. But officers consider that the character and appearance of the land is not typical of the surrounding green space. As you saw from site, it is a brownfield site with an existing storage building. It's not really used as a recreational area. And in addition, the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. So an additional dwelling in this location would make a small contribution to the lack of housing supply. Now, as I say, the principle has previously been established, and there's no difference in this scheme. It still is a single dwelling, and the extant permission is for a single dwelling. But as you'll note from this drawing, the footprint of the 2 schemes has changed. So the slide above shows the extant planning permission, which was for a single dwelling, relatively simplistic form, with dormer, windows and room within the roof space. The current proposal builds out more of the site, encompasses a double garage, and there is there's a wing element which would contain residential accommodation, and there's a small element to the south of the existing dwelling as well, which has been added on. So it is a much larger footprint, but in appearance it would still take the form of a single-storey unit. There isn't a consistent building pattern in the area. The dwellings on Moorside are relatively ad hoc, and because this is an isolated site, it doesn't need to be designed to take into account an established street scene pattern, for example. So officers are satisfied with the design of the scheme. Clearly, the building does take up a much larger proportion of the site. However, the garden to the rear, while it is relatively narrow, it does run the full length of the rear boundary and does wrap around the side, and there is a 6-metre length at the widest point at the back. In addition, there is a small garden area proposed to the front. So, on the proviso that permitted development rights are removed, officers are satisfied that the proposed development represents a good reuse of a previously developed site. In terms of the impact on existing properties, well, it doesn't affect any existing properties significantly because they are some distance away further down Moorside, as we saw from our site visit. There is a day nursery adjacent to the site, but environmental health have been consulted and raised no objections. And in addition, this is the same principal issue as was addressed at the previous permission. So in other words, we've already addressed impact on the nursery through the last planning permission when members didn't find any issue with that. So these show the elevations of the scheme. As I say, it's a larger scheme than the previous one, but it does take on the same design. So this is the proposed design, and the extant permission elevations are on the slide above. So in all, it's considered that this revised proposal represents a sustainable form of development. Other issues have been addressed. The parking, this is a thing that I've not mentioned, but parking will be provided within the site, and highways raised no objections subject to the additional condition which is contained in the update. So that's it from me, Chair.
Over to you. There's no speakers again. John.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't sit on the original one of this, so this is passed. It was passed at a time where 5-year supply was more of an issue than it is now. I'm not sure whether that would play if this came before us again, but that said, it's passed and we have what's in front of us. Would it have been passed with this scale, with this amount of amenity land left on the site? I'm not altogether convinced it would be. Would 3/4 of it be passed? I'm thinking that probably it would, yes. So it's a delicate, it's a fine balance one, this for me. I want to see what other members say, but it's pushed to its limits, is this one, for my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, you did say permitted development rights will be removed. I'm grateful for that because it is a large, well, it's not a large development actually, but it's large for this site. There will be very little garden around it, but I suppose if you're not into gardening and you've got that view in front of you, you don't really need much more. I think I am happy to pass this as long as there are no permitted development rights in the future. It's a tough squeeze into the site, but I don't think within the whole ambience of the surroundings that it will look over large or it won't overface anybody else. I mean, it is on its own, so I'm happy to move this one.
Thank you. Well, it is a rather large building compared to the original plan, but having said all that, there isn't going to be a lot of garden, but we cannot start saying how much garden there should be. I've 1 or 2 houses built on my patch which haven't got any garden at all, so I don't see a problem. I'll support it, no worries.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm a bit of the same opinion, to be honest. Not everybody wants a garden. Personally, I've got a massive garden and it's a pain in the backside, really, when it comes to cutting grass. Yeah, I think I'd rather have plastic, yeah, as you said, plastic grass and plastic flowers. I think, like you said, there's already a planning application for this that's passed, which I presume actually hadn't got permitted development rights removed on it anyway, so if it hadn't, maybe they could have ended up with something more or less this size if they'd then put them permitted development rights into use. So I don't really see a problem with this at all, long as now permitted development rights are removed. So if nobody's seconded and Carol's proposed it, I'm quite happy to second and support that we accept this application.
Any more for any more? That's the only thing that we were worried about at briefing was a refuse vehicle getting up and down that road. So we did see somebody parked there that I think it was because we were going, but you know, it does happen. So it's been moved by Councillor Pattison, seconded by Councillor Bellamy. All those in favour, please show. 7-0 again. I could. Right, so we've still won anyway. So next item 13, page 43, and this is Manchester Road, Marsden. We have got some additional paperwork, if you remember, from committee last time, so we may need to go into private session at some point in time. And if you can just remember not to mention any figures, would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is William Simcock and I'm the case officer for this application. This was first presented to the Strategic Committee on the 2nd of August, and committee resolved to defer the application to request the following updated information. In brief, details of where this model of affordable housing, affordable but private managed, has been used previously, and whether it's been a success, full consultation response from Strategic Housing, and an updated viability appraisal beyond abnormal costs, including the financial position based on rental projections and long-term ownership. This has now been done, and I can provide more details about the affordable housing position later in this presentation. The scheme was the subject of a formal pre-application consultation, and has resulting in a number of changes to the design. It's for the demolition of the former fire station and the erection of 24 new two-bedroom flats, 2 single-bedroom flats, 1 dwelling house, associated parking, a new vehicular access and landscaping. I will get up the site layout plan. The new access to the site is to be formed here, with parking, and the apartments are going to be arranged in 2 main blocks, with the facade of the fire station retained and a new dwelling house being built in the space behind it. This shows you some small-scale elevations, some larger-scale ones. This is the southern or rear aspect. And this is the northern elevation, the elevation to the street, to Manchester Road. And this is a 3D artist's impression. It is proposed that natural coarse stone and a high quality artificial blue slate roof would be used. And here are some photographs taken near or within the site. This is the approach from the west, from the Huddersfield side. No, sorry, that would be from the east, yes. With the fire station, this is the Mountain Rescue Centre behind. A view looking uphill from Manchester Road. Some alternative views of the site. And from the opposite side. And these just give you a general context. These photographs are looking from the vacant land behind, down towards the site, which is just out of view here, and looking down towards the fire station site. The site is allocated for business, general, industrial and storage and distribution in the UDP, but is allocated for housing in the publication draft local plan, and the location in fact makes it far more suitable for housing. The immediate surrounding development is varied in scale and massing, and it is considered as a three-storey building viewed at the bottom of a slope would not appear over-dominant. The new buildings contain some modern features, although those that are not typical of the area, including balconies, but the balconies would be predominantly to the rear of the south and not in the more prominent and sensitive northern elevation, and the scheme incorporates features that help to provide a vertical emphasis and to break up what would otherwise be a possibly slab-like appearance, such as the recessed elements here and the tall windows at this end. The scheme would provide satisfactory space for buildings and privacy for existing future residents and a generally high standard of living, subject to conditions requiring obscure glazing and screening where appropriate. Potential traffic noise can also be addressed by a condition. The access would provide acceptable visibility, and a total of 31 spaces are shown, which is considered acceptable for location and for the type and scale of development. The site does not provide any special constraints relating to flood risk or biodiversity. Ground contamination can be addressed by a condition. And finally, affordable housing. The Council's interim affordable housing policy of 2016 states that on developments of 11 or more dwellings, 20% of the total number should be affordable. The development in its original viability appraisal demonstrated that there are a number of abnormal costs on site, and that the realistic number of units that could be provided was 2. Subsequently, the applicant has submitted figures for viability based on long-term rental incomes rather than sales prices. The Council's external consultant has questioned some of the assumptions and concluded that scheme would not, on the basis of the information that would be available, be viable as build to rent. The applicant maintains the scheme is viable, based on it being a bespoke development providing a long-term rental income stream, and their offer to provide the 2 affordable units at 20% below market rent still stands. It is proposed that these would be managed by the developer as part of the development as a whole. There are recent precedents for this approach, including 2 in London, and this is also in accordance with the recently updated BPG, in particular on the topic of build to rent, which advises that where a development is wholly built to rent with an element of affordable housing, the whole development should be managed under a common management plan by the same landlord. The process for letting, eligibility criteria, management of the units and monitoring of the letting should be agreed in a Section 106 agreement. Specifically, the Government also refers to longer tenancies of 3 years or more to all new tenants who wish to rent for this period. It is therefore recommended that permission is granted, subject to the conditions set out in the report, and to the developer entry into a Section 106 agreement requiring the provision of affordable units as part of the scheme, and the other details such as management arrangements referred to earlier. Thank you, Chair.
We've got 2 speakers. First is David Story.
Thank Thank you, Chair, members. My name is David Story. I'm a Chartered Town Planner speaking on behalf of the applicant. When this matter was reported to you back in August, the first two speakers moved and seconded the recommendation to approve and made some welcome comments on the quality of the scheme to regenerate the site. Understandably, looking at the affordable housing issue, questions and queries were raised by members, and that resulted in the application being deferred. You've obviously got papers in detailed information regarding the viability. The assessment, although this has always been a 100% rented scheme, the initial assessment on viability was based upon market sales, and that showed a questionable viability. Since deferral, we've looked at a viability appraisal based purely on 100% rented. That's been, again, independently assessed by your appointed consultant, who questions the viability of that scheme. There's a moot point as to whether really this should be providing any affordable based upon those two viability assessments. But putting that to one side, the applicant is a well-known local family-run house builder who has invested heavily over the years in quality schemes throughout the Colne Valley. And they're taking a long-term view in respect of this development and are prepared to accept the provision of 2 units that meet the council's criteria in terms of nominees who meet the age requirements and the discounted rent. And equally more importantly, provide long-term tenancies of 3 years or more. In fact, the whole of the scheme will have the same tenancy agreements. The top and bottom of it here really is that as a development, this site's been crying out to be developed for a long time. Nobody's looked at it because of the questionable viability status of it. The only reason why it can come forward at this stage is because you have a local house builder who's heavily invested in the area and prepared to continue that investment. Steve Byram, the owner of SB Homes, will speak after me, obviously, to explain the rationale behind it. But I would hope, given the further information provided and significantly the MPPF's clarification on build-to-rent being an appropriate affordable provision, that you will wholeheartedly support the recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Next, Steve Byram, please.
Hi, I'm Steve Byram, SB Homes. Some of you may be aware we're a family-based building company, live in the Colne Valley all my life, and parents beyond that. I like to think we've built up a reputation for building good quality homes whilst being fair along the way. And I think most people that know what we've done probably like to think they'd agree with that. Piece of land, it's a difficult piece of land to develop. It's had 2 previous gas holders on the site and the foundations are already in place. We're fully aware of what we were taking on. There's a dilapidated fire station. There's intention, as we said earlier, is to actually retain the frontage of that because it is quite attractive, but the back of it, there's no value in it whatsoever. We've looked at this site for over a number of years and we've seen previous people come look at the scheme and drift away. The agents came to us over a number of years, asked if we could do anything with it, and we sort of went away from it because of the difficulties. But as land's become harder to find in and around our locality, we came back to it. We feel we've got a proposal now which fits this site, location and the need of the village. And we're willing to make this investment, and it's a unique investment because it's such a long-term payback. And we were only doing that basically because of its personal and professional links in and around Marsden. And I fully understand scepticism. Some members may think, here we go again, developers, builders not wanting to provide affordable housing. But in reality, we actually feel as if we will be providing affordable properties, rented, and we actually will be doing it with no grants, no subsidies. We'll be doing it purely as a building development, and we believe we can stack it up because that's what we control our in-house costs. We actually built the previous only RSL scheme in Marsden for Connect Housing at Anson Court. I was surprised at the level of rent that actually an RSL charged on that scheme, on that particular scheme. And afterwards, I thought to myself, well, we could actually make that work ourselves at them level of rents. So once this scheme came, once we looked at it, I thought, well, we can actually make it work and do the same and own the site. Hence, that's why we brought it forward. As target market's going to be people of a sort of a senior age, maybe 50, 55 plus, who only want to move once, who have little gaps in as tenancies. We want to aim at people who keep a good house, and we know there's high demand in this area. And it's been agreed between ourselves, planning department, strategic housing, we will provide 2 units, 80% of the current market value. And these will be let under all the RSL conditions, under a Section 106 agreement. And as we all know, it's a prominent location on the main road through Marsden, which has been an eyesore for a number of years. I only think what we're proposing will actually regenerate this area, and we'd start construction fairly sharpish once, hopefully, we've got an approval. If there's any questions, I know it's not them, but I'm more than happy to take any questions that anyone would have. Okay, thank you.
So over to you now, members. Councillor Walker.
Right. I'm one of the local ward councillors, and I agree that this is a site that's not been used for many years, and it's crying out really for someone to come in and do something with it that will actually add something to the village of Marsden. And I think these proposals, with the type of accommodation that's going to be on offer, that will add to the housing stock and will be a boon for the local community. I think it is important that the 106 agreement is followed through in terms of the provision of 2 units which have got affordable rent. I think it's also important that we think about the transport issues in Marsden, which might also include trains that actually turn up and run on time as well, but that's a different story. I also think it's really important that where possible we do encourage local builders who've got a good track record of bringing local employment and also building properties to a high standard where it's not just about profit, it is about producing good quality housing which will be an asset to the community in the long term. So I move approval of this.
Thank you, Chair. Another one of the ward councillors for the Colne Valley. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Rob said. And to be honest, this site it's a mess as it is at the moment and has been for a long time. And I have to agree with what Steve Byram said. Nobody else will touch this site. It's got so many problems. It does need to be a local builder, a local developer that knows what them problems are on this site. I see this development as being a good thing for the Colne Valley. It's exactly what the Colne Valley needs. It's that sort of development. It's accommodation for the elderly, which the Colne Valley and Marsden is desperate for, to be honest. There isn't anything. If you look at the accommodation that is available for that sort of age group in the Colne Valley, yeah, there's some lovely bungalows. They're all up at 30, 40 steps on a hillside. Nobody can get into them, So I see this as to be honest, it's a win-win. Byrams have got a reputation of being absolutely, their builds are quality, they're usually spot on. And I will admit, and I'm sure Byrams will tell you, we've had arguments about viability before and coming back and this, that and the other, but I'm more than happy to support this. In fact, I will second thing, and I think from the last meeting we had, I actually proposed that we accepted this. I 100% am behind this, and I think it is the right application for this site, and I think it's one of the things. And I did notice that somebody put in an objection about doctor's surgery, and maybe there'd be problems with there, but I see this as being probably local people more moving into there anyway to downsize and that sort of thing, so I don't think it'll have a great impact on infrastructure anyway in that area. So,
thanks, Anna. Paul.
Through you, Chair. Yes, thank you. I think what I've heard so far from Mr Byram and his agent have been very, very helpful in respect of the offer for affordable housing. And I think where, just to let you know, Steve, that I actually represent the housing strategy side of the council. I think the key thing that we had as an issue was really trying to arrange a management framework on what effectively was a private rented scheme that originally fell outside of the definition of affordable housing. Fast forward to midpoint this month, 13th of September, we now have guidance in place that can actually offer us clarification on how we take that forwards. It is very clear that we will need to agree the provisions in a Section 106 agreement. And I think your offer of working with us and looking at the framework in the manner of a registered housing provider is helpful. I think we need to bear in mind the specific provisions that the government are asking us to look at, including the longer-term 3-year tenancies, which now are actually improving on the potential 6-month assured short-hold tenancies. This is a very helpful offer for us. We have trialled private sector rented accommodation before, where that's been private sector rent to buy models. The key difference is that in those models we've used an accredited housing manager to support us in that, so that all the services and standards will link in with the council. This now will be a pilot exercise, so we need to get this right, and we need an exemplary agreement that we can use as a model to take forwards. But I think this is a very helpful offer, particularly now that the government have offered us clarification on how we can take this forwards.
And I think that's interesting, because that's something that's definitely changed from the last time we looked at this. And it's changed my mind over a couple of issues, and I've no real problems in supporting it. I honestly do not want to start and go through the viability. There is problems in there. And I was going to read you out the interpretation of an abnormal, because we had a conversation about what is an abnormal and what isn't an abnormal. And I don't want to go into that because it need to take us all afternoon. So to me, I want to put it on record that I still think there's some issues with the viability on this. But given the changes in the MPPF and the fact that we are now, interpretation does allow for this to be called affordable homes in some sort of respect, because they're all for rent, I'm quite happy to support it. What I would like to see is an assurance, whether it's part of the 106 or not, or from the developer, that reduction of 20% continues indefinite throughout the term of them properties, however long before they're demolished or anything like that. If that's something that we can negotiate, I'd definitely be in support of this, because that is the way that this should be done. Because we are accepting something different than what we would be doing normally. So, them's my comments. I know we've had, I'm over in a second, but I would support it on them actual terms if we can add that as a condition. Thank you.
Yes, we can actually secure an in perpetuity arrangement for this scheme now in relation to the guidance that the government has offered. And there would be a periodic review of the rental framework to ensure that was actually shown. And the government are requiring us to look at the rental point, the price point, in relation to an RICS accredited valuation. So that actually gives us some teeth to make this happen, and the assurity that we can give you through that process.
Right. Have we eventually got to a point where we can actually agree it? Because it was difficult at the beginning, because none of us really understood what this particular point on the affordable rentals were. So we are a pilot scheme, we're going to keep up to it, look into it, tie it all up. Right. In that case then, members, it's up to you. It's been moved, it's been seconded.
If I could just, through you, Chair, briefly come back on the question that Councillor Walker asked, is there anything that can be done about the transport situation? It is mentioned in a paragraph or two in the main report and the update that this a contribution to sustainable transport initiatives can be agreed in the terms of Section 106 agreement also. The details to be decided at a later stage.
Why I raised it was just to approve that that was in there. I wasn't questioning it. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Right. All those in favour, please show. That's 7-0. Thank you. Next item, item 14. This is our pre-app. So this is the pre-app for Leeds Road playing fields, and it's Huddersfield Town Football Club. This takes me back a few years into the mid-90s when we were talking about building a new stadium, and now we're going to look at building new training facilities, from which I've seen look pretty damn good. So over to Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. This is a pre-application inquiry, so I'm just briefly going to go through the development and some policy issues, but then I will let the applicant present the scheme in detail. So the proposal at this stage comprises the redevelopment of the existing training ground complex at Huddersfield Town off Leeds Road. The existing site, as you can see from this aerial photograph, comprises a number of existing pitches. Things have moved on actually since this stage. I think there's some more pitches marked out on the site. And to the north, there is an existing parcel of land where we conducted the site visit today and parked the bus, which is to be extended into, which I'll come on to shortly. So the red line boundary covers all that area of land off Leeds Road. The proposal is to regularise and improve the existing facilities. The main proposals involve the demolition of the existing training ground building and facilities, and the erection of a new 3-storey training complex, and the creation of a new football pitch, which is mainly designed to cater for the for Huddersfield Town under-23s, and that will be on the northern parcel of land where we, as I say, where we park the bus today. There are also proposals to enhance the existing access off Leeds Road. There will be a total of 128 parking spaces proposed and an area for the parking of coaches or buses. The proposed pitches would also be, the new pitch to the north will be floodlit, and there's floodlighting proposed to the other pitches within the existing complex. As I explained on site, but just to summarise again, the site involves the redevelopment and therefore the loss of some facilities for Syngenta. So Syngenta used this site for sport and recreation, and the applicant at this stage is proposing to build or extend existing facilities further along Leeds Road at the council run complex, 500 metres to the north, more or less opposite the Syngenta site. Now, the reason I've not gone into any detail on that in this case is because those proposals have not been firmed up by the applicant, and they might well come onto that when they do their presentation. But suffice it to say that the applicant does intend to make sure that the existing facilities for Syngenta will be provided for elsewhere, and hopefully in a more accessible location. So very quickly, in terms of planning policy, the existing site is an area of urban green space. Well, the improvements to that site won't change or won't affect that designation. The main conflict with policy arises from the proposed extension of the new training pitch to the north. So the parcel of land just to the north, as outlined, is currently unallocated in the UDP, but in the emerging local plan it will be a priority employment area. Now, as I've set out in the report, the applicant has said that the proposals would result in a total of 70 full-time equivalent jobs and 20 casual workers. So there would be an increase of about 20% in terms of job creation. But in principle, the redevelopment of this site for a football pitch isn't in strict compliance with the emerging planning policy. So officers are suggesting that in any subsequent planning application, the applicant outlines firstly how many jobs are to be created by the proposal, and as I say, I think it's probably about a 20% increase, but also looks at the potential of this land to support the expansion of any existing businesses, because the land in question is currently owned by Hoyer, who are an existing business within the wider employment allocation. So it's important for us to establish that that land isn't going to prejudice, the development of this land for a football pitch, for example, is not going to prejudice the future expansion of that business. But all things considered, there is an obvious clear benefit in developing this site to improve what is a very important community facility, Huddersfield Town Football Club, by improving their facilities, making a new enhanced training complex, creating additional jobs. So it's likely that, in principle, officers will be able to support the scheme, subject to further detail being submitted along with an application. So, in principle, we think that the loss of this employment land can be justified, but it will depend on the detail in an application. In terms of other matters, any subsequent planning application would require a transport assessment and some more information about car parking and justification for the number of spaces proposed, some information on contaminated land, a coal mining risk assessment, and because there are flood risk issues in the area, we would need some flood risk assessment information as well. What I intend to do now is just hand over to the applicant just to go through more of the visuals, really, because I've not gone into any detail on those, but let the applicant present the scheme.
So my name's Joshua Hallowell. I'm part of the team at PWA Planning, who are the elected planning consultants to assist the football club with this proposal. As has been outlined already, the intention here is to create a facility that's representative of the needs and current position of the club, as well as to generate a legacy of the club's time in the Premier League and that under the ownership of Mr Hoyle. The report that Matthew has put forward to you today, it successfully and succinctly details the parameters of the proposals that the club would intend on progressing as part of a formal plan application. Whilst the scheme is constantly evolving, following input from numerous parties, the scheme put forward as part of the original pre-app is still wholly representative of the intended scale and design of the redevelopment. If we could just go to slide 4, I think it is, under the existing, but yep, that's the one. So you can see the image outlines the current layout. The main building has got the number 4 on it, is the one that you'll have seen when you arrived at the site today. It's the main entrance building on site. And then onto the next image, which is the proposed one that you had up earlier. You can see it's evident from this image that the proposals don't actually seek to drastically change the existing layout of the site. The 3 main pitches on the western side, they'll be retained, they'll be enhanced where necessary, and the proposals at the moment include a kind of a green screen wall around the perimeter for the most northern of 3 pitches. The 2 main changes represent the development of the new state-of-the-art training pitch to the north-east on the additional land, which, as you'll know from when you visited and parked to the site today, it's disused, it's overgrown, and it is used for parking in place. The pitch is going to be developed to the highest standards that the industry allows for at the moment, which is the same as that is available at the John Smith Stadium, thus allowing the club to recreate match day conditions throughout the year during training sessions. Secondly, the proposals involve the demolition of the existing main canal side building and erection of new first team complex. I think it's image 10 on this, I think. It's the one of the frontage of the building. So yeah, and that one, yep. So the building will not only include top-end play facilities like your plunge pool, sauna and steam rooms and medical facilities and gyms. It does seek to have additional office space, meeting space, media and lecture space to ensure the new facility is truly representative of a hub of activity for all things Huddersfield Town. Alongside the new building, the existing first team building will also be partially developed to accommodate the younger player groups. I think this is shown partially in the next image, the one after this, sorry. Yep, so you can just see there on the latter side, that's an existing building that's going to be kind of done up to the same standard of that which is proposed, just to kind of give a more holistic outlook to the whole development. Touching a bit on what Matthew said, obviously the principle is somewhat established in that it's been used for training ground since the club took control of it nearly 10 years ago. So the stance from our point is that it's clearly preferable for this site to be redeveloped than for the club to have to look for a new facility elsewhere. It's noted in the officer's report, section 5.4, that it is covered by urban green space, but the policies in both the UDP and the emerging plan, they do permit for development which allows for the continuation of an existing use, which the report again concurs is applicable to the case at hand. With touching on the element in terms of the additional land, we acknowledge that's designated for future employment use, and in this regard discussions are ongoing with Hoyer, who are the owners. Every attempt has been made to ensure that what we intend to bring forward future-proofs both Huddersfield's intention and the Hoyer Group's intention. They have told us, what their requirements are, and we're in discussions constantly with them. We don't intend to go into any further detail on that element today because those discussions haven't finalised, but of course we accept that as part of any future application that these elements would need to be put forward. And again, by way of other limitations, this is thought to be limited mainly to flood risk, and the future application would touch on that. Talking a bit more about what Matthew touched on in relation to the Leeds Road complex, it kind of is now public knowledge to a degree that it will eventually result in the loss of the Sports and Social Club. So I'd say whilst he's going through these, you can see these are a bit more of what the internals will look like. As you can see, it's very representative of a modern, quite attractive facility at a high-end training facilities across the country in the Premier League. With us developing this state-of-the-art facility, there is a strong intention to not lose sight of what the facilities the site offers at present, which is that associated as well with the Sagenta Sports and Social Club. And it will result in the loss of those facilities eventually, but there is intent on the club having continued support of that group, and in the process of progressing plans to extend the facilities on Leeds Road, and this would allow for the replacement of all the existing facilities, the bowling green, the snooker room, the bar and everything that they benefit for at the moment. These images of both the floor plans and the layouts haven't been shared just yet because they're not at a stage where they are ready for them to be publicly released, but there is a strong acknowledgement from the club that when that time arises, that not only will the relevant bodies be consulted on those proposals, but everyone else as well. Just to touch on where the club are at the moment, following the submission of this, we've continued to progress the proposal in the correct and appropriate manner, and we've had continued engagement with the relevant bodies, and we've had a public consultation event down at the training ground. The public consultation event allowed for members of the club, employees of the club and members of the public to come along. There was about 50 people at the end of the day. We've had a designated email set up for that, so we've had a continued flow of responses coming in from that. So we're hoping that by the time we're ready to submit the application, that we really will have a kind of holistic, joined-up, high-end development, because everyone's been able to kind of see what we're doing and feed into that process. We do have a video fly-through of the proposal, which I've sent to the council, but I will leave that up to yourselves as to if you wish to see that. Otherwise, Julian from the club and myself are here and can answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Yeah, just generally, I very much support this development. I think it's really important in terms of the long-term evolution of and retention of Huddersfield as a top-class football team. A couple of things I'd like to ask, though. What about women's football in terms of the facilities that are offered? That's obviously becoming much more important. Locally, there are a lot of young women, girls who are interested in becoming involved in football. Is this facility going to help facilitate that involvement in the longer term? My second question is in terms of the environmental standards to which this building is going to be constructed. I would imagine that there's the likelihood of quite heavy energy use with all the sort of heating and cooling and things like that that will be taking place. Have you got intentions to build this to a very highly energy efficient standard? Yeah, okay, that's it.
So if I take the ladies' football question, for those of you that don't know, the club has a charitable arm called the Town Foundation. That was established by Dean and Janet Hoyle, I'm going to say about 5 years ago, with a single-purpose charity to deliver breakfast clubs in the locality. So we currently deliver we have around 35 breakfast clubs at mainly primary schools, but some secondary schools and special needs schools in Kirklees. And when I came to the club 2.5 years ago, we'd kind of, other than the foundation doing breakfast clubs, which is amazing, we kind of handed over what I would call our community responsibilities to the zone and to the Giants to run in coordination. So I appreciate the time when somebody owned both, and it was a good idea to amalgamate back office and lots of other things. But the one thing that we shouldn't have done was to give that away, or indeed what we should have done was took it back much quicker than we actually did. So I came in and we did straight away. So we gave notice to the zone, we came out, and we follow now through the new charity as reconstituted, a sport education and health and social inclusion principle. So we have 4 key pillars, plus a giving pillar within which Breakfast Club sits. And ladies football sits within the foundation as a key objective to have more girls playing football. So we have a girls development officer employed within the foundation, and we also now have a more formal relationship with Huddersfield Town ladies, and the intention is that they will play a number of fixtures for their first team on that site. So the new pitch that comes in on the Hoyerland is a Deso pitch, which is to the standard of the stadium. So undersoil heating, irrigation, and the fibre sort of strands that come through it that make it all the more durable. So we're hoping that we can get more games on there, and actually it is in the plan for the ladies to play a number of fixtures. So I'm not going to say all of them, but I think a number of fixtures definitely. But girls, women and development is key to our foundation strategy in developing girls football in the locality.
Just to respond on the second question as well. Obviously, the intricate design is ongoing, but we've acknowledged that that it's going to be quite a high consumption building. There's a designated energy centre within the design thus far that's going to have to deal with a lot of those issues, capacity issues. I think the club are not far off being where where they can't really be maxing out what they've got at the moment. So we know that in terms of any forthcoming development, that's got to be quite at the forefront. How we design the building, how the natural cooling, all the energy, all that stuff is really being front-ended into this. So yeah, I think the intention is to be as energy efficient as possible with the new build.
Thank you, Chair. I think what I've got to say probably sounds quite mean and sad, mean-spirited and sad, when we're faced with the vision that we've got in front of us and the amount of inward investment that we're talking about here. But I'm going to talk about parking. And I'm just going to ask about the overspill parking, and when we come to sort of estimate your own success in some of the public events that you've got there. The scale of the parking, I think, is probably something that doesn't concern me. I mean, it's just... What are your thoughts on that?
The scale is there's insufficient parking at the new facility, the proposed facility. Yeah. 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 Yeah, so I think that one thing that's got to be considered in this application is the level of public events that will happen at the training ground. Now, we're not saying that it will be a totally private facility. We've had these conversations internally about what would be open to the public or may not be. But what is certain is that, you know, the level of involvement that the public have with the site now is not going to be replicated at the new training facility. So we're not anticipating that the day-to-day parking figures will be as required now. We're looking at providing for in excess of what's needed for the employees and the players and all of that. So we're hoping that the provision will be adequate for what the intended use of the training ground will be. In relation to the fact that the training ground as is has been used on match day parking and such, I mean, the club have been, with them knowing about wanting to do this for some time and trying to work out the parameters, they've made quite a few strides forward with that, like with the gasworks parking scheme that the club have got to kind of facilitate the fact that if they were to reduce parking here, that would affect match day parking, that there's been provision made elsewhere. So I think where we're looking at the moment is that we feel that we've got more than adequate, or we can deliver more than adequate position for the use of a training ground, and to a degree that would dictate the level of public events that we could have at the complex. But ultimately, we're aware that that is something that's going to be reduced in any event.
Thanks, Chair. Quite a couple of questions, actually. A few questions. I heard what you said about the energy efficiency, but I know and expect this to be carbon neutral. But we will be looking at getting it as near as possible to something like that. That's definitely tips you over the edge as far as I'm concerned. And I think it was a good question by Councillor Walker, actually. The other thing is, can I ask the viability? If or you say no or you can't negotiate, is that a deal breaker? They've definitely said yes. Yeah, yeah. So you're in the middle of that transfer. Right, right.
When we talk about future-proofing product, we want a minimum 25 years to invest in it.
Yeah.
So it's about 1.2 million to put the level of pitching we need for the lighting and so on. A bit like any grant that you would go to for the football foundation or whatever, you need 25 years.
Yeah.
Minimum commitment to get into that. With the knowledge that, you know, if this eventually decides to do differently or maybe more slightly get the land back.
Right.
So that's one thing. We're giving them a little bit more land back, as you can see, where the red line goes. We currently have, if you just go north of 7, there's a white piece of land here. Where your cursor is now, so the bit that's curved is their land. The bit that's now straightened off with the red line, we're giving them back.
Yeah.
So to make more parking on site for them. So we've agreed heads of terms with them on that basis. We're taking a specific amount of space in the and the rest is going back to them. So the parking is provided for them. It's a 25-year lease, and if at the end of that they want it back, we can have it. Hopefully not, but it's a successful. But to answer your point, if Hoyer at any point said we want that land back, we would put desperately somewhere else on the site. And we want the building would be the same, everything else would be the same, because that builds an arm. There is that sensitivity where you invest in some land at leasing, it becomes a little bit more challenging. But I think we're over that hump.
But it's not the deal breaker. It's not the deal breaker. It's because you negotiate.
It would be more complicated, and we would essentially put a DESO on 4 as an example. But it would make it quite challenging for us to run operationally on a day-to-day basis while we want it out. We invested in another industry. It's not beyond what we want.
No.
But it's not our preference. Our preference is to have the first one and carry it continue as is, and we establish a new pitch that can cater for the 17s and 90s ladies and first team training in ground where we have lots of problems when it's frozen and it's the new pitch with all the modern facilities we want to have.
Can I just go on, Chair? Something we just raised just then about public events and other events. Is part of your business plan to lease or to rent this out at some some stage it's purely for the Huddersfield Town?
It's 100%
Right.
So we currently have the Syngenta relationship, which is good. Complaining about that being quite outlined from Syngenta at the time when we entered into agreements on the land about access and ownership of Poland and the rest of it. And interesting when you come to a club that has this sort of thing, we make it work. And I do, honestly, no. And we're at a point now where we work with the various committees and I represent the club at the various committees that exist. And everyone is understanding that we have a commitment to make, we're making a commitment in a facility down the road to improve and we will accommodate various aspects of what happens to enable, honestly, the training ground to be 100% of the town.
That's fine. Can I just ask a couple of questions of planners? And that's really about the flood zone 3. Obviously, there is a particular issue with it being in flood zone 3. What? I know we've asked for an assessment and whatever. What? And probably flood alleviation. Are we likely to ask on this?
Yeah, well, through you, Chair, this is not as a sensitive use as a residential scheme would be, for example.
Yeah.
So in terms of how it works through sequentially, it's likely that this use would be acceptable in principle, subject to, mitigation, alleviation, whatever that might involve. We have requested comments from the drainage department. They've not come back to me yet, but we will, in issuing the letter to the applicant, our pre-app response, we'll make sure that we get full comments from the council's flood officer, drainage department. We don't consult the Environment Agency as part of the pre-application, so we would advise the applicant to do that. But it will rely on the applicant submitting a flood risk assessment, and the mitigation can be included in there, and we will then consult the Environment Agency. But there's no reason in principle. I mean, there's potential flood risk issues on the existing site as well. Yeah. So there's no difference in that sense.
And it does happen. Let me tell you. See, when I drive in from Jewellery side, it can be extremely bad down there. I wouldn't want that to affect the viability of it all. The other thing is, it's about the. It's a newish building. It's a very extremely modern building and whatever. No, the proposed building. Can we make sure we get some samples of what's actually coming into it? Because it seriously, we don't seem to get these no more. It'd be interesting to see what the concept is.
Yeah, well, I think with the club, we're dictated in terms of developing this, as you can imagine, by the season. When we can't get onto site. So, as far as our initial conversations have gone, is that if this was to be supported, the movement would be quite swift from the club to start doing what they can. As such, things like talking to suppliers, talking to people, that stuff will happen earlier, which should facilitate us being able to engage with you guys earlier. In relation to the makeup and the materials used in the scheme. And
you want white and blue, wouldn't you?
You want white and blue, yeah.
We would like it to be sympathetic. Well, I'm speaking myself. We'd like it to be sympathetic as well.
Oh no, yeah. And I mean, as a local chap as well, I know that there's obviously the clamour for the stone element as well, which is obviously incorporated in the corner bit. So I see how the reassurances would help you guys, or comfort you guys, which So I don't envisage that being an issue if that's something that is a wish of the councillors.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Kane's probably covered most of my points because I had things on flooding and samples and stuff. And I'm the worst person in the world to talk about football because I know nothing. If it's 2 wheels and an engine, fantastic. Football, nothing. But generally, no, I'm pretty supportive of this, of anything that is supportive and puts Huddersfield on the map and all the rest of it, I think is brilliant. If it's supporting the under-23s, have I heard? That's fantastic. Let's support the youth. The film was pretty impressive. Only thing that seemed to be missing were popcorn, to be honest. Could have done with popcorn. And maybe a few half-dress players on it. Might have been showing a bit of muscle. Might have just helped me watch it a bit. But well, is that just me? But no, to be honest, yeah, I'd be pretty supportive. Like I say, I think Councillor Kane covered the flooding side of it and the samples. And the only other thing I had was car parking. So, like I say, I think it looks pretty good.
Thank you. I would just like to cover this car parking. What formula did you use when you actually put down the amount of cars you're going to have in the car park? Did you use a formula? Because they had, I don't know when they had a formula when they built the stadium, but they were hellishly wrong because there's a lot more cars go there than this parking room, you know.
No, I get that, and inherently there's an issue with a lot of stadiums, isn't there, in relation to
I'm sure there is.
But yeah, not to detract from your point in that regard. I think, you know, there's general county parking standards, and I think Kirklees have their own parking standards as well. From our perspective, from the usage, we'll be looking to adhere to them. Yeah, and I think in that regard, it further goes back to the point we made earlier that if we're viewing this as a Huddersfield town development that is to serve the office staff, the players and the management that work there, with an excess for whenever there is a larger event, then we do feel that there is enough to meet those standards.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent idea, and I do support all you're wanting to do. There is just one question I'd like to ask you, and you probably won't be able to answer it. When are we going to start scoring some goals and winning some games? You know?
Well, I might be a Huddersfield fan, but I'm a planning consultant, so I mean, your guess is as good as mine on that one. But rest assured, we'll be out on the terraces supporting them. Yeah, no, you do right. We'll bring you in next time.
Yeah, hi. Steve Sampson, Highways Development Management. Will be assessing the application when it comes in. In relation to the parking requirements, obviously we'd have to see that demonstrated through a transport assessment. We'd like to see the current use, the expected use, how the car parks will be managed, i.e. the number of coaches, will some of the coaches be using the car parking spaces and such, and then a fallback position of if there are issues when events are occurring, how will that be managed out in the future? So we're not asking, one size won't fit all for this site.
Fixture, and then we will demonstrate to you how we manage that on those given days. But they're literally, once a fortnight kind of idea, whereas at the moment it's pretty much open access. Match days is, more cars than you can count.
Yeah, it's just really a heads up that that type of information we'll require to demonstrate to us, for you to demonstrate to members, and that things have been considered really. Thank you.
Yeah, I think just to make you aware, I assumed that a transport assessment statement is going to be necessary. That's been commissioned already. All I'd ask is that if there's anything specific that you feel that the relevant transport consultant wouldn't have factored in that you think is pertinent to this site, then inform Matthew and I'll make sure that that's included in the submitted information. But rest assured, I'm fully aware that that's what you will need to identify if you can support the proposal. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Being very green this afternoon, but another kind of green area is the flood risk and the trees ecology areas. As part of the Council's green space strategy, which is under development at the moment, the Leeds Road corridor is seen as a very important area in terms of the Green Streets approach, and it is intended to try and green those areas, both to make them look better, but also in terms of reducing water runoff, helping mitigate against particles from traffic pollution and things like that. So given the fact that this Green Street is going to go past the end of this development, it would be quite a good idea if you could potentially link up with the people who are involved in that development to get some advice on the kind of things that you could do on site, which might make it a better site for you to use, and also add to this overall approach to improve the environmental quality in that area.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. I mean, you know, on that Leeds Road corridor, it's a very commercial environment. So yeah, we're arguably the greenest space that you'll find on there, with there being mainly playing pitches. So it makes sense that whereby we've got, as you can see on the eastern periphery, you know, areas of open green space and parts of the plans that incorporate green walls, that anything we can do to be more holistic in terms of the council's wider strategy is something that would make sense from our perspective. And equally, even smaller things, you know, like if we're wanting to make this look smart, the landscaping is quite key. So, you know, if it's going to be fitting for what the aspirations are, so, you know, anything that meets that strategy, and happy to engage with them to try and get that feedback. But I appreciate the point.
Any more questions? No? Right. Let's hope it happens. We did eventually get the McAlpine Stadium eventually, and, you know, things are going forward. It's just a bit of, like Councillor Firth said, let's have some bloody results. Right, thanks everybody for your attendance this afternoon. Thank you.